Captain Rhys reclined against the gnarled trunk of an ancient, alien tree, his breath measured yet heavy. The atmosphere was dense with the sense of damp, unfamiliar earth and vegetation that emitted faint luminescence. Twilight deepened, bathing the landscape in an eerie glow as bioluminescent flora oscillated with an almost sentient rhythm. Above, peculiar aerial fauna flitted through the waning light, their high-pitched calls fading into an unseen canopy. His mind raced, piecing together the chain of events that had led to this foreign and hostile world. The temporal rift, a marvel of modern science, had once been hailed as humanity's greatest breakthrough, a gateway to the past that promised to unlock secrets buried by time. But its stability had always been precarious, a fact he had warned the scientists about more than once. It had started as a routine operation. The team had been monitoring minor fluctuations in the rift's energy signature when the readings spiked violently. Before anyone could react, the anomaly surged, its swirling vortex shifting from a steady blue to an ominous, blood-red hue. Then it came, the creature. A grotesque fusion of shifting, unnatural forms. It had burst through with terrifying speed, defying all expectations. There had been no hesitation. He and his team had moved instinctively, positioning themselves between the scientists and the advancing abomination. The initial barrage of gunfire had barely slowed it down. Its armored hide deflected the bullets with ease. Chaos erupted. Tendrils lashed out, smashing equipment and tearing through reinforced walls like paper. Amid the destruction, he had tried to coordinate a retreat, but the anomaly's instability had worsened. A sudden, overpowering force had swept through the chamber, pulling everything toward the rift. He could still see the desperate look on Lieutenant Silva's face as she shouted something, her words drowned by the deafening roar. Then came the pull. The crushing, inescapable force had ripped him from his footing. One moment he was shouting orders, the next he was weightless, hurled into the heart of the vortex. Time and space had blurred, warping his senses in a disorienting maelstrom of light and sound. And then, impact. Bone-jarring, unforgiving. He had landed here, in a place that defied all logic, a world where survival would demand more than just skill. It would test his very will. Disoriented and isolated, his immediate reality became survival, limited resources, an almost empty pistol, and a terrain both alien and hostile. With a sigh, Raiden leaned his head back, gazing up at the alien stars twinkling into view. Only time would tell if he could endure long enough to find a way home, or if this inhospitable landscape would become his tomb. Raiden set off through the forest. Without a light source, he moved cautiously. Piercing eyes scanned the shifting shadows, ever alert for movement. Strange sounds echoed all around, growls, chitters, and eerie cries that set his nerves on edge. He had been hearing the thunder since morning, and now it had started to rain, and he still hadn't found shelter yet. Heavy rain was falling on Raiden, and all of his clothes were wet. He opened his mouth to drink from the fresh rainwater. It was cool and clean-tasting. His muscular frame seemed unfazed by the cold, but he knew the relentless downpour could still sap his strength if he didn't find protection soon. Lightning flashed, illuminating massive tree trunks swaying in the wind. No caves or rock outcroppings were visible through the sheet of falling water. He'd have to wait it out and hope the morning brought answers. He stumbled upon a cave, its mossy entrance barely visible behind trailing vines. Cautiously, he followed the dim passage inward. The faint glow of bioluminescent moss cast wavering shadows over strange carvings on the walls. Captain Rhys traced their swirling patterns, feeling a nameless dread. These were no primitive scratches. The etchings displayed an uncanny symmetry and order. Someone, or something, had designed them with purpose. And for an instant the ancient carvings on the walls seemed to writhe and shift as though coming alive. Raiden's breath caught in his throat as he backed away, muttering under his breath, "What the hell is this place?" He backed deeper into the cave, pulse racing. Shadows danced at the edges of his vision. When lightning struck again, he whirled, but saw only the empty passage stretching ahead. Was this place getting to him, driving him mad? Or were darker forces at work? He paused to get his bearings. The glowing moss up ahead cast a spectral glow, playing tricks in the flickering half-light. The deafening rumble of thunder echoed outside, sending vibrations through the ground. Raiden flinched as a section of the cave's entrance gave way, sand and gravel pouring down in a suffocating cascade. He rushed toward the narrowing gap, his heart sinking as he saw the damage. The storm had choked the entrance with debris, leaving only a small, impassable opening. Panic gripped him as he realized he was trapped. No way out. Damn it, not like this, Raiden growled, his voice taut with frustration and fear. He turned in fear when he heard a sound behind him, scraping as of stone dragging against stone. Raiden spun, raising his pistol with a shaking hand. Between him and the inner chamber, blocking the way, something was emerging from the shadows. Captain Rhys peered into the shadows, straining his eyes. Whatever was moving there seemed to absorb the faint light, appearing as a formless void. He edged backward step by step, pistol trained on the shapeless mass. "Come on, just show yourself," Raiden muttered under his breath, his pulse racing. The same sound echoed again in the corridor. Raiden glimpsed flecks of luminescence within the shadow, eyes, or something eye-like, gleaming with an alien intelligence. As Raiden retreated further, his footing shifted on loose rocks. A small landslide tumbled into the dark, momentarily lighting the cave mouth. In that flicker of illumination, Raiden caught a distorted silhouette resolving from the formless mass, long limbs dragging against the walls. Raiden clenched his jaw, his eyes narrowing as a deafening crack of thunder reverberated through the cave, shaking the very walls. "And now the storm's not even giving me a break," he muttered, frustration lacing his voice. The rhythmic scraping drew nearer. Raiden hesitated, wondering if passing deeper into the unknown bowels of the cave was wiser than confronting what followed. But the entrance was now blocked. There was no turning back. He edged around a corner, the faint green glow of bioluminescent moss clinging to the damp walls suffusing the passage ahead. Peering into that eerie light, Raiden steeled himself for whatever mysteries or horrors the path might yet reveal. Raiden's eyes scanned the dark, twisted corridors ahead, and he muttered to himself, "This place, it feels like it's alive, watching every step I take." As Raiden hurried deeper into the dark maze of tunnels, the unearthly sounds of pursuit grew closer behind him. A faint, eerie luminescence from patches of moss along the walls provided just enough light to reveal more forking passages stretching endlessly ahead. He had lost all sense of direction, with no clue which way led further into the cursed mountain's depths or back to the surface he now realized was so far above. As he paused to catch his breath, a shallow scrape of claws on stone made him whip around with a gasp, pistol gripped in both hands. Scanning the darkness, his grip tightening on the pistol, Raiden growled in a low voice. "This place isn't just abandoned. It's haunted, cursed. Something's alive down here, and it doesn't want me leaving." In the faint beam, he saw nothing but the empty tunnel wavering back into blackness. A strange, pungent smell filled the air, decay mingled with an oddly alluring sweetness. The sourness tugged at his thoughts, its strange, almost intoxicating beauty pulling him deeper into an unsettling haze. Raiden tried to shake off the sensation of something watching him from the shadows, but the fragrance lingered, clouding his senses in a way that made it difficult to distinguish between the danger around him and the eeriness of the place itself. Raiden's brow furrowed as he inhaled the pungent scent once more, his mind struggling to make sense of it. He murmured to himself, "That smell. It's like a lure, drawing me in, but I can't tell if it's the cave or something worse waiting just beyond the darkness." Raiden's breath came out in visible puffs, the cold, damp air seeping into his bones as the storm raged above. The low rumble of thunder reverberated through the mountain, distant but persistent. The dampness clung to his skin, the chill making his strong muscles ache. But it was the oppressive silence of the cave that unsettled him more than the weather. The only sound, besides his own labored breathing, was the soft, rhythmic drip of liquid from somewhere above, each drop echoing off the stone in a regular pattern. Listening to the eerie sound while his eyes darted around the cave, Raiden whispered, "Each drop feels like it's counting down, like time itself is slipping away, and there's no escape from this place." He shivered, the chill in the air cutting through his damp clothes, making his muscles tense. He muttered to himself, "The storm's still howling up there, but down here, it's colder, like the mountain itself is breathing." Captain Rhys glanced around, his eyes straining to adjust to the faint glow of the moss lining the walls. Breaking into a loping run again, he prayed that he would find a way to escape before the horrors of the hunt surrounded him as the shadows grew thicker around him. The tunnel forked and forked again, each choice seeming to recede farther into the lightless bowels of the mountain. Sweat slicked his skin despite the chill, breath coming in ragged gasps. Any second, he expected talons to sink into his flesh from the suffocating blackness. Raiden's ragged breathing echoed off the close walls of the narrow tunnel as he stumbled onward, bracing a hand against the damp stone to guide his way. A faint phosphorescence shimmered ahead, the first glimmer of light he had seen since losing sight of his pursuer. Raiden narrowed his eyes, his pulse quickening as he approached the strange glow. "I don't know whether to feel relieved or more trapped," he muttered, his voice low, filled with unease. Hurrying toward the pale glow, he broke into a larger cavern bathed in an otherworldly radiance emitted by strange bioluminescent growths clumped like masses of throbbing jelly on the ceiling high above. He took a moment to lean against the cool rock and regulate his thundering pulse. The cavern was not entirely still, nor empty. Strange rustlings and clicks emanated from its shadowed nooks and crannies as unseen entities stirred at his intrusion. But here, at least, was space enough to see or sense an attack coming. Unlike the tight confines of the tunnel where talons could seize him from any direction in the blackness. As his eyes adjusted, Raiden began to pick out details in the fungoid phosphorescence. Alien structures like arched brows and fluted columns melded seamlessly with the natural rock, as if organic and inorganic had grown entwined over eons. Captain Rhys muttered to himself, his voice barely a whisper against the hollow echoes. "This place, it feels like the remnants of something long forgotten." He recognized no tools or materials in their fabrication. These ruins were the work of no species known to human records. He took a step back, eyes scanning the strange architecture. "It seems, wasn't built by anything human," he muttered, his tone tinged with both awe and dread. Raiden knew there was no time for exploration now. His only priority was finding a way out of the lightless maze before the hunter on his tail closed in for the kill. Picking a tunnel at random that appeared to angle upward, Raiden began to feel along its walls with careful steps. His hand came away wet, and he lifted it to sniff, the same pungent ichor he'd encountered before. It carried that unnervingly sweet yet sour scent, filling his senses with an overwhelming pull, like a lure he couldn't resist. The odor seemed to cling to his skin, tugging at his thoughts, and for a moment, he felt that unsettling, intoxicating haze creeping back over him, clouding his judgment. Raiden shook his head, forcing himself to focus, his voice hoarse as he muttered, "I can't let this thing get inside my mind." A scuttling noise came from ahead, like the passage of some many-legged monstrosity. Raiden froze, straining in the gloom, as droplets of calcinous slime trickled down the wall beside him to sizzle on the stone floor. Raiden slowly withdrew his hand from the weeping wall, ears pricked for further sounds from the tunnel before him. Only a precarious calm held sway in the glow-lit cavern, but those vaulted spaces echoed with an ageless, relentless organic industry that might spawn fresh terrors at any moment. He groping in darkness with an unknown entity scrabbling close put him at ever greater disadvantage. A rustle and patter of appendages announced its approach, but no shape coalesced in the gloom. Letting instinct guide where sight could not, Raiden swung his heavy pistol toward the noise. A rapid clicking answered, as of hard keratin striking stone in rebuttal. Fighting rising panic, Raiden slowly pivoted to keep his back from the cavern wall. Raiden's heart pounded as the seconds dragged on. Did he now face one, or many? The thought maddened as scuttling resumed on all sides. Captain Rhys fired when he thought he saw something moving. Only the sharp crack of the echo answered his shot, rebounding endlessly in the vaults. The faint click that followed was the unmistakable sound of an empty chamber, amplifying his frustration. "Damn it, empty already," Raiden muttered through gritted teeth, feeling the weight of his useless weapon in his grip. Escape or last stand. One path led deeper under this accursed mountain, while behind lay only an annihilating dark. With a hoarse cry, Raiden chose his course and bolted blind, bullets expended. The narrowing tunnel shuddered with the percussion of Raiden's frantic footfalls. A glow loomed ahead, more welcoming than the fungal lamps of the cavern. Raiden burst from the confinement of rock into a misty dell open to the storm once more. But this was no natural grotto. Monolithic stones towered all around in uncanny formations, bearing sigils too orderly to be chance. Lightning crackled overhead, its blinding arcs momentarily illuminating the strange symbols etched into the stones. The jagged light cast eerie shadows that danced across the mist, revealing brief glimpses of movement. Raiden paused, his breath fogging in the chill air, and scanned the surroundings warily. Fat spatters of rain cleansed his stinging eyes. Raiden gasped great lungfuls of the fresh, bog-scented air, every sense alert still for the crawling death following. A rumble and squeal of enormous subterranean gears grated on the edge of hearing, as if in response to his flight from their nether kingdom. "They don't let anyone leave, do they?" Raiden muttered, his voice a mix of defiance and exhaustion, the words barely audible over the storm's roar. His respite was brief. Scuttling resumed at the tunnel mouth, urgent and hungry. Raiden scrambled up a weed-choked slope between leaning stones. At the crest, he skidded to a halt. Before him yawned a fathomless chasm separating this island of monoliths from the forests steaming beyond. Torrents cascaded from storm clouds down sheer cliffs invisible in the gloom below. No bridges, no way across. Just death at my back and an abyss at my feet, Raiden muttered through gritted teeth, his gaze darting desperately for a miracle. Captain Rhys examined the rugged terrain for any handhold or route across. Behind, the slithering pursuers drew closer, peering over the ridge's edge with malevolent intent. His eyes scanned frantically, lighting upon a massive stone obelisk leaning precariously over the void. Raiden muttered to himself, his gaze fixed on the leaning obelisk. With luck and speed, I might just climb it like a ladder, reach the top, and from there, who knows? Bracing himself, he sprinted toward the leaning monolith and leapt, grasping its pitted surface. His hand scraped rocks as boots sought fragile toeholds. The obelisk groaned under his weight, but held. Climbing as quickly as he dared, Raiden glanced back to see twisted forms emerge atop the ridge, fixing their alien gaze on his dwindling form. Faster he climbed, higher, as they skittered down the obelisk's balanced mass, gaining with every motion. His breath rushed in his ears. With a thunderous crack, the ancient spire shuddered and began to fall. Raiden redoubled his efforts, lunging as it tilted into the void, grasping desperately at the lip of stone, and pulled himself to safety just as the monolith and his pursuers plunged soundlessly into the mist below. Raiden let out a ragged breath, his voice hoarse as he whispered, "That was too close." He collapsed panting onto the damp stone, peering over its ledge to the swirling gray below. As his breathing returned to normal, Raiden took stock of his surroundings. Before him lay a thick mist over what appeared to be more ruins in the valley. Ancient spires and crumbling walls emerged eerily from the fog, like the remains of a long-lost civilization. As Captain Rhys made his way down the treacherous terrain, the mists began to part, revealing extensive ruins blanketed in moss and vines. More incredible still were artifacts barely visible under decades of decay. Thunder roared as lightning illuminated the ruins, and rain poured relentlessly. Raiden's clothes clung to him, drenched and heavy, water dripping from his hair as he pushed open a partially collapsed wall. He found steps leading underground, dusty halls extending into the gloom, something glinting up ahead. Moving closer, he realized it was light, spilling from an open portal. He entered a bare chamber, a simple, empty space that echoed the ruins outside. Dust and loose stones littered the floor, offering no hint of any purpose. "Just another dead end," Raiden muttered, his weariness evident. He felt exhausted after the events that had happened to him. The place seemed safe. He laid his head on the ground and went into a deep sleep,